The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Windsor Castle as King Charles stood in his private study, carefully reviewing the draft of his upcoming Christmas address. Snow had begun to fall outside, creating a peaceful backdrop that seemed fitting for what would become one of his most meaningful speeches as monarch. The weight of tradition rested on his shoulders, but today felt different. Today, he carried something more personal in his heart. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had spent the year facing challenges that would have broken many people. Her cancer diagnosis earlier in the year had shaken not just the royal family, but the entire nation. Charles remembered the day she had told him about her illness with such grace and courage that it left him speechless. She had sat in the very chair across from his desk, her hands folded calmly in her lap, explaining her treatment plan as if she were discussing weekend gardening plans. "Your Majesty," she had said with a gentle smile, "I hope you know that I intend to continue serving as long as I'm able. This is just another challenge to overcome." The king had watched his daughter-in-law navigate her treatment with the same dignity she brought to every royal engagement. She never complained, never sought pity, and never let her illness define her public presence. Instead, Catherine had used her experience to connect with others facing similar battles, visiting hospitals when her health permitted and writing personal letters to cancer patients around the world. Charles walked to his window, watching the gardeners tend to the winter landscape. He thought about how Catherine had continued working even during her chemotherapy treatments. She had adapted her schedule, focusing on causes closest to her heart while maintaining her commitment to the crown. Her early childhood development work had expanded during her illness, as if facing her own mortality had made her even more determined to improve life for others. The draft speech on his desk contained the usual Christmas themes of hope, unity, and reflection. But Charles knew it needed something more this year. The British people had watched Catherine's journey with admiration and concern. They deserved to know that their future queen had not only survived but had emerged stronger, more compassionate, and more dedicated than ever before. His private secretary, Sir Clive Alderton, knocked softly on the door before entering. "Your Majesty, the television crew will arrive in 2 hours for the recording. Would you like to review any final changes to the script?" Charles picked up his pen and made a small mark on the paper. "Actually, Clive, I think we need to add something special this year. Something about resilience and the strength we find in facing adversity." Sir Clive nodded knowingly. Everyone in the household had witnessed Catherine's remarkable journey over the past months. Her return to public duties had been gradual but purposeful. She had chosen each appearance carefully, making sure her presence would bring comfort and inspiration rather than concern. The king remembered her recent visit to a children's hospital, where she had spent hours with young cancer patients. The photographs from that day showed Catherine kneeling beside hospital beds, holding small hands, and listening intently to worried parents. Her own experience had given her words a new weight, a deeper meaning that resonated with everyone she met. "The princess has shown us all what true strength looks like," Charles murmured, more to himself than to his secretary. "Perhaps it's time the nation understood how much her example has meant to all of us." As the morning progressed, Charles found himself thinking about the early days of Catherine's marriage to William. He had watched her grow from a nervous young woman into a confident royal, always graceful under pressure but sometimes uncertain about her place in the ancient institution of monarchy. The cancer diagnosis had changed something fundamental in her approach to royal life. Where once she might have hesitated before speaking at an engagement, Catherine now spoke with quiet authority about issues she cared about. Her illness had stripped away any remaining self-doubt, leaving behind a woman who understood her purpose with crystal clarity. She was no longer just fulfilling royal duties, she was using her position to make a real difference in people's lives. The king's thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of the film crew. As they set up their equipment in the blue drawing room, Charles continued to refine his speech. He wanted to find the perfect way to acknowledge Catherine's strength without making her uncomfortable with too much attention. She had always preferred to let her work speak for itself rather than seek personal recognition. The challenge lay in crafting words that would honor her resilience while respecting her privacy. Charles had learned much about the balance between public and personal life during his decades as heir to the throne. He understood that the most powerful royal moments came not from grand gestures but from authentic human connection. During a brief break in the technical preparations, Charles called William to discuss his intentions. His son answered immediately, his voice warm but cautious. "Father, I hope you know how much Catherine appreciates your support this year," William said. "But, you know how she feels about being singled out for praise." Charles smiled. That's exactly why she deserves recognition. Her humility in the face of such challenges has been extraordinary. The British people need to hear that their future queen has not just survived this year but has used her experience to serve them even better. William was quiet for a moment before responding. She'll be watching the broadcast with the children. They've been so proud of their mother this year. Perhaps knowing that you've acknowledged her strength publicly will help them understand how special their mum really is. After ending the call, Charles returned to his speech with renewed purpose. He began writing about the unexpected gifts that sometimes emerge from our darkest moments. He wrote about the courage he had witnessed in his own family and how that courage had inspired him as both a father and a king. The afternoon recording session went smoothly. Charles felt the words flow naturally as he spoke to the camera, imagining he was addressing each British family personally. When he reached the section about resilience and finding strength in adversity, his voice took on a deeper, more personal tone. He spoke about the remarkable examples of courage he had witnessed throughout the year, mentioning healthcare workers, teachers, volunteers, and ordinary citizens who had faced extraordinary challenges with grace and determination. Then, with careful subtlety, he referenced the inspiration he had drawn from watching family members navigate personal difficulties with dignity and purpose. The camera operator noticed the slight change in the king's expression during this section. Charles's eyes seemed to soften, and his voice carried a warmth that went beyond his usual ceremonial tone. It was clear he was thinking of someone specific, someone whose courage had touched him deeply. After the recording, Charles remained in the drawing room for several minutes, looking out at the winter landscape. Snow continued to fall, covering the grounds in a blanket of pristine white. He thought about Catherine's children and how they had handled their mother's illness with remarkable maturity. George, Charlotte, and Louis had continued their school activities while quietly supporting their mother at home. Catherine had told him about the conversations she'd had with her children about illness, treatment, and recovery. She had been honest with them about her diagnosis while reassuring them about her determination to get better. The children had responded by taking on small additional responsibilities around their home, creating cards and drawings to brighten their mother's treatment days. The king's admiration for Catherine extended beyond her personal courage to include her wisdom as a mother. She had used her own experience to teach her children about resilience, compassion, and the importance of supporting others during difficult times. These lessons would serve them well as future members of the royal family. As evening approached, Charles reviewed the final version of his speech one more time. He had managed to weave Catherine's story into the broader narrative of national resilience without making her the center of attention. The references were subtle but clear to those who knew the family's journey over the past year. The speech would be broadcast on Christmas Day, reaching millions of homes across the Commonwealth. Charles hoped his words would not only honor Catherine's remarkable year but also provide comfort and inspiration to others facing their own challenges. Sometimes the most powerful messages came not from grand proclamations but from quiet acknowledgments of everyday heroism. That night, Charles called Catherine personally to let her know about the speech. She listened quietly as he explained his intentions, occasionally asking gentle questions about specific phrases. Her response was characteristically modest. "Thank you, Your Majesty," she said softly. "I hope people understand that I've simply tried to do what anyone would do in my situation. This year has taught me so much about what really matters." Charles smiled at her humility. "That's precisely why your example has been so powerful, Catherine. You've shown us all how to face adversity with grace while continuing to serve others. That's what true leadership looks like." After ending the call, the king felt a deep sense of satisfaction. His Christmas address would carry a message of hope grounded in real experience, real courage, and real love. Catherine's journey had given him the perfect example of how personal challenges could strengthen rather than weaken one's commitment to service. The snow continued to fall outside Windsor Castle as Charles prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring Christmas Eve, and soon his words would reach families gathering around their televisions on Christmas morning. He had found a way to honor Catherine's remarkable year while delivering a message that would resonate far beyond the royal family. In homes across Britain, people who had faced their own health challenges, family crises, or personal setbacks would hear the king's words about resilience and strength. They would understand that even the royal family faced difficult times, and that courage wasn't about avoiding problems but about facing them with dignity and purpose. Charles had learned much from watching Catherine navigate her illness. Her example had reinforced his own understanding of what it meant to serve others, particularly during times of personal struggle. The Christmas address would reflect these insights, offering comfort and inspiration drawn from genuine experience rather than abstract ideals. As he turned off the lights in his study, Charles felt grateful for Catherine's presence in the royal family. Her strength had enriched not just their personal relationships but had also provided a powerful example for the nation. Tomorrow's broadcast would quietly celebrate that strength while encouraging others to find their own courage in facing life's inevitable challenges. Christmas Eve morning brought crisp air and brilliant sunshine to Windsor Castle. King Charles woke early, as had become his habit during important occasions, and immediately thought about the broadcast that would air the following day. The final preparations were complete, but his mind continued to work through the deeper meanings behind his carefully chosen words. Catherine had returned to public duties gradually throughout the autumn, each appearance carefully planned to maximize impact while protecting her still recovering strength. Charles remembered her first major engagement after completing treatment, a visit to a cancer research center where she had met with scientists working on breakthrough treatments. Her questions had been informed by personal experience, creating connections that went far beyond typical royal visits. The king walked through the castle corridors, past portraits of monarchs who had faced their own family challenges and national crises. He thought about how Catherine's approach to her illness reflected the best traditions of royal service. She had never sought sympathy or special treatment, instead using her platform to highlight the experiences of others facing similar battles. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Catherine's oncologist, had privately shared with Charles how impressed she had been with the princess's attitude throughout treatment. Catherine had arrived for every appointment prepared with questions not just about her own care, but about advances in treatment that might help other patients. She had used her recovery time to research childhood cancer initiatives and mental health support for families facing medical crises. The king's admiration for Catherine had grown throughout the year as he watched her transform personal adversity into public service. Her Christmas card photo, taken during her recovery, showed a woman whose smile carried new depth and meaning. The image would be distributed worldwide, offering hope to countless people facing their own health challenges. Charles made his way to the chapel for morning prayers, a routine that had become even more meaningful during Catherine's illness. He had found himself praying not just for her recovery, but for wisdom in supporting her family and understanding how to use his position to help others facing similar struggles. The chapel was quiet except for the soft sounds of his footsteps on ancient stones. Here, surrounded by centuries of royal history, Charles reflected on how Catherine had already secured her place in that history not through grand ceremonies but through quiet courage and unwavering dedication to service. During her treatment, Catherine had continued her early childhood development work from home, participating in video conferences with researchers and educators. She had adapted her working methods but never abandoned her commitments. Charles had seen the reports of her continued involvement, noting how her colleagues had been inspired by her determination to maintain focus on helping children despite her own challenges. The king remembered visiting Catherine during one of her treatment cycles. He had found her in her home office, surrounded by research papers and project proposals. Despite feeling unwell from chemotherapy, she had been reviewing applications for early childhood education grants, determined to ensure that funding decisions weren't delayed by her medical schedule. "I can review these documents from anywhere," she had told him with a weak but determined smile. "Children can't wait for their programs to be funded just because I'm having a difficult week." That conversation had stayed with Charles throughout the development of his Christmas speech. Catherine's commitment to service, even during personal crisis, exemplified the highest ideals of monarchy. She understood that royal duty wasn't something to be set aside during difficult times but rather something that could provide purpose and meaning when everything else felt uncertain. As Christmas Eve progressed, Charles received updates about viewing party preparations across the Commonwealth. Royal households in Canada, Australia, and New Zealand were organizing gatherings where citizens could watch the Christmas broadcast together. The king knew that many of these viewers had followed Catherine's health journey with personal interest, seeing in her experience reflections of their own family struggles. The Prince and Princess of Wales spent Christmas Eve at their country home, surrounded by extended family and close friends. Charles had spoken with William earlier, learning that Catherine was feeling well and looking forward to the holiday celebrations. The children were excited about Christmas morning but also curious about their grandfather's speech, having been told it contained special messages about their family. George, Charlotte, and Louis had matured significantly during their mother's illness. They had learned to help more around the house and had become more thoughtful about spending time together as a family. Catherine had used the experience to teach them about resilience, showing them that challenges could make people stronger rather than weaker. The king thought about how Catherine's children would remember this Christmas. Years from now, they would look back on 2024 as the year their mother faced cancer with grace and courage. They would remember how she never let her illness prevent her from being present for their important moments, attending school plays and sporting events whenever her health permitted. Charles had been particularly moved by a letter Catherine had written to a young girl with leukemia. The 8-year-old had sent a drawing to the princess, along with a note saying she wanted to be brave like Catherine. The princess's response had been deeply personal, sharing strategies she used to stay positive during treatment and encouraging the girl to talk about her feelings with trusted adults. The exchange had been kept private at Catherine's request, but Charles had been shown the correspondence by William. The princess's words revealed not just her natural compassion but also the wisdom she had gained from her own experience. She wrote about finding joy in small moments, appreciating the support of family and friends, and maintaining hope even on difficult days. Evening approached as the royal household prepared for Christmas Eve dinner. Charles knew that tomorrow's broadcast would reach people in hospitals, care homes, military bases, and family living rooms around the world. Many viewers would be facing their own health challenges or supporting loved ones through difficult times. The king had crafted his speech to speak directly to these experiences without dwelling on sadness or difficulty. Instead, he focused on the strength that emerges from community support, family love, and personal determination. Catherine's story provided the perfect example of how people could face adversity while continuing to serve others. During dinner preparations, Charles received a call from the Archbishop of Canterbury, who had been following Catherine's journey with pastoral concern. The Archbishop praised the princess's example of living faithfully during trial, noting how her continued service during illness reflected deep spiritual maturity. "She has shown us what it means to trust in something greater than ourselves," the Archbishop said. "Her witness has been powerful precisely because it has been lived rather than proclaimed." Charles agreed with this assessment. Catherine's approach to her illness had been notably free of self-pity or drama. She had faced each challenge practically, surrounded herself with excellent medical care and loving support, and maintained her focus on contributing to the world around her. This combination of pragmatism and faith had created a powerful example of resilience. The Christmas Eve dinner conversation included family members sharing their favorite memories from the past year. Despite the challenges, there had been many moments of joy and connection. Catherine's successful completion of treatment had been celebrated quietly but deeply, with family gatherings that focused on gratitude rather than dwelling on the difficulties that had been overcome. Charles thought about the photographs that would accompany news coverage of his Christmas speech. The official portraits taken during Catherine's recovery showed a woman who looked different than before her diagnosis. Her eyes held new depth, and her smile carried hard-won wisdom. She looked like someone who had faced significant challenges and emerged with greater understanding of what truly mattered. The king's speech would air the next morning, reaching audiences who had watched Catherine's journey with admiration and concern. Many viewers had sent letters of support throughout her treatment, sharing their own stories of facing cancer or other serious illnesses. The royal household had been overwhelmed by the volume and sincerity of these messages. Catherine had insisted on reading many of these letters personally, despite the emotional difficulty of learning about others' struggles. She had used these stories to inform her understanding of what people needed most during health crises, not just medical treatment but emotional support, practical assistance, and hope for the future. The princess had quietly begun planning new initiatives focused on supporting families dealing with serious illness. She wanted to use her experience to create resources that would help other families navigate the complex emotions and practical challenges that accompany major health diagnoses. As Christmas Eve night settled over Windsor Castle, Charles felt confident that his speech would honor Catherine's remarkable year while providing comfort to others facing similar challenges. He had found a way to celebrate her strength without embarrassing her with excessive attention, respecting her preference for focusing on service rather than personal recognition. The king's final review of his speech revealed carefully woven references that would be clear to those who knew Catherine's story but accessible to all viewers. He spoke about the unexpected strength that emerges from difficulty, the importance of community support during challenging times, and the way personal struggles can deepen one's commitment to helping others. Tomorrow morning, families across the Commonwealth would gather to watch the Christmas broadcast. Many would recognize in the king's words a tribute to Catherine's courage and an acknowledgement of her inspiring example. Others would simply hear messages of hope and resilience that spoke to their own experiences of facing life's inevitable challenges. Charles felt grateful for Catherine's presence in the royal family and for the opportunity to share, however subtly, the lessons her journey had taught them all. Her courage had enriched not just their personal relationships but had also provided the royal family with a deeper understanding of how to serve effectively during times of national and personal difficulty. The snow that had begun falling the day before continued throughout Christmas Eve night, creating a peaceful backdrop for the holiday celebrations that would follow. The King's Christmas address, with its gentle tribute to Catherine's strength, would soon join the traditions that connected royal families with the people they served, offering comfort, inspiration, and hope for the year ahead. Christmas morning arrived with the gentle chimes of church bells across Britain. In living rooms and hospital wards, military bases and care homes, families gathered around television sets to await the King's traditional Christmas broadcast. This year carried special significance as many viewers had followed the royal family through a year of unprecedented challenges and remarkable resilience. At Adelaide Cottage, Catherine sat with William and their 3 children in their comfortable living room. The Christmas tree sparkled with lights and homemade ornaments the children had created during her treatment months. Charlotte had made a special star that read Mummy's Brave Year in careful 8-year-old handwriting, which now held the place of honor at the top of the tree. The princess wore a soft green dress that had become one of her favorites during recovery. The color brought warmth to her face and complemented the renewal she felt as she approached this Christmas as a cancer survivor. Her hair had grown back differently after chemotherapy, with a slight wave that framed her face and seemed to reflect the changes the year had brought to her entire outlook on life. George, now 11 and increasingly aware of his family's public role, had asked his mother what Grandpa might say in his speech. Catherine had smiled and told him they would listen together, but she suspected it would focus on the themes that had become important to their family during the challenging months: gratitude, resilience, and the strength found in supporting one another. Across London, in a small flat in East End, Margaret Harrison settled into her favorite chair to watch the broadcast. At 73, she had been diagnosed with breast cancer just 2 months after Catherine's announcement. Margaret had followed the princess's journey through every newspaper article and television report, finding courage in Catherine's calm determination and grace under pressure. Margaret's daughter Susan sat beside her, holding the hand that had grown thin during chemotherapy treatments. They had made watching the King's Christmas speech an annual tradition, but this year felt different. Both women hoped to hear acknowledgement of the struggles they and countless others had faced, validation that their quiet battles mattered in the larger story of national life. In Edinburgh, Dr. James MacLeod prepared to watch the broadcast with his medical staff at the Royal Hospital for Sick Children. The oncologist had treated dozens of young patients throughout the year, and many of their families had drawn inspiration from Catherine's public journey through cancer treatment. Dr. MacLeod had seen how the princess's example had helped normalize conversations about childhood cancer and given hope to families facing devastating diagnoses. The hospital's family room was decorated with Christmas drawings created by young patients, many of whom had sent cards to Catherine during her treatment. The royal household had responded to every message, creating connections that went far beyond typical royal correspondence. These exchanges had demonstrated Catherine's genuine understanding of what families needed during medical crises. At Buckingham Palace, senior staff gathered to watch their king's 4th Christmas address since ascending to the throne. Private Secretary Sir Clive Alderton reflected on how Charles had grown into his role, particularly during the family health challenges of the past year. The king had shown remarkable strength in supporting Catherine while maintaining his own demanding schedule of royal duties. The broadcast began at precisely 3 o'clock, as tradition demanded. King Charles appeared on screen wearing a navy suit with a subtle burgundy tie, seated in the blue drawing room at Windsor Castle. Behind him, a Christmas tree glowed softly, and family photographs were visible on a nearby table, including recent images of Catherine with her children during her recovery. The king's opening words focused on the traditional Christmas themes of hope, peace, and reflection. His voice carried the authority of his position but also warmth that suggested personal understanding of the challenges many viewers faced. As he spoke about the importance of family and community support during difficult times, those who knew Catherine's story understood the deeper meaning behind his carefully chosen phrases. "This year has reminded us that strength often emerges from our most challenging moments," the king said, his eyes meeting the camera with particular intensity. "I have witnessed extraordinary courage in facing uncertainty, dignity in confronting adversity, and grace in supporting others while managing personal struggles." Catherine felt a gentle squeeze from William's hand as they recognized the subtle reference to her journey. The children listened intently, sensing this was a special moment even if they didn't fully understand all the implications. Charlotte climbed onto her mother's lap, instinctively offering the comfort she had learned to provide during the difficult months. The king continued by highlighting the remarkable work of healthcare professionals, teachers, volunteers, and ordinary citizens who had served others despite facing their own challenges. He spoke about the inspiration he had drawn from watching people transform personal difficulties into opportunities for deeper service and greater compassion. Margaret Harrison nodded knowingly as she listened. The king's words seemed to speak directly to her experience of finding purpose in supporting other cancer patients even while managing her own treatment. She had started a small support group at her local hospital, using her experience to help newcomers navigate the overwhelming world of oncology appointments and treatment decisions. Dr. McLeod smiled as he recognized how the king's message would resonate with the families he served. Many parents had told him how Catherine's example had helped them explain cancer to their children, showing that illness didn't have to mean the end of normal life but could instead become part of a story of resilience and hope. The most poignant moment of the broadcast came when King Charles spoke about the unexpected gifts that sometimes emerge from periods of difficulty. His voice took on a deeper, more personal tone as he described how witnessing courage in others could strengthen communities and inspire greater compassion. "I have seen how facing personal challenges with grace can become a source of strength not just for individuals but for all who witness such remarkable resilience," he said. "Sometimes the most powerful examples of leadership come not from grand gestures but from quiet determination to continue serving others despite our own struggles." Catherine felt tears gathering in her eyes as she realized the king was acknowledging her journey in the most respectful way possible. He was honoring her experience without making her the center of attention, instead using her example to inspire others facing similar challenges. The tribute was subtle enough to preserve her privacy while clear enough to validate the significance of what she had accomplished. The king's next words addressed the importance of early detection and medical research, themes that had become personally important to the royal family. He praised the advances in cancer treatment that had helped so many people return to full, productive lives, and he encouraged continued support for medical research that offered hope to future patients. William watched his father with deep appreciation, understanding how carefully Charles had crafted these messages. The king was using his platform to normalize conversations about serious illness while celebrating the strength Catherine had shown throughout her treatment. The tribute was everything William had hoped for: meaningful without being overwhelming, personal without being intrusive. The broadcast continued with the king's traditional messages about unity, service, and hope for the future. But the sections about resilience and courage had been woven throughout, creating a tapestry that honored Catherine's journey while speaking to the universal human experience of facing and overcoming adversity. In hospitals across Britain, patients and families watched with special attention. Many had written to Catherine during her treatment, sharing their own stories and drawing strength from her example. The king's acknowledgement of their struggles felt like recognition that their battles mattered, that their courage contributed to something larger than their individual experiences. The speech concluded with the king's wishes for peace, healing, and continued hope in the year ahead. His final words emphasized the strength found in community support and the importance of facing challenges together rather than alone. The camera lingered on his face for a moment, showing an expression that combined royal dignity with genuine warmth and understanding. As the broadcast ended, Catherine sat quietly for a moment, processing the emotions stirred by her father-in-law's thoughtful tribute. She felt deeply moved by his recognition of her journey but also grateful that he had framed it within the larger context of national resilience rather than making it solely about her personal experience. George broke the silence by asking if Grandpa had been talking about Mummy's brave year. Catherine smiled and explained that Grandpa had been talking about many people who had been brave, including her but also including doctors, nurses, teachers, and families who had faced difficult times together. The children seemed satisfied with this explanation, understanding that their mother's experience was part of something larger and more important than just their family's story. Charlotte announced that she wanted to make another ornament for the tree, this one saying "Everyone's Brave Year," to acknowledge all the people Grandpa had mentioned in his speech. Phone calls and messages began arriving immediately after the broadcast. Family members, friends, and colleagues reached out to express their appreciation for the king's thoughtful words. Many people had recognized the subtle tribute to Catherine and wanted to share their own gratitude for her inspiring example throughout the year. The reaction from the public was overwhelmingly positive. Social media filled with messages of support and appreciation, not just for Catherine but for the king's sensitive handling of a deeply personal family experience. People praised his ability to honor his daughter-in-law's courage while speaking to broader themes that resonated with anyone who had faced serious challenges. Medical professionals particularly appreciated the king's emphasis on early detection and research funding. Several cancer organizations reported increased donations and volunteer applications in the days following the broadcast, suggesting that the royal family's openness about their experiences had motivated others to get involved in supporting cancer patients and their families. Catherine spent the rest of Christmas Day surrounded by family, feeling grateful for the love and support that had carried her through the difficult months. The king's tribute had validated her experience while respecting her desire to focus on service rather than personal recognition. It felt like the perfect way to acknowledge the year's challenges while looking forward to continued opportunities for meaningful work. As evening approached, Catherine reflected on how much had changed since the previous Christmas. She felt stronger, more focused, and more deeply committed to using her platform to help others. The king's speech had captured not just her personal journey but the broader transformation that often accompanies surviving serious illness, the shift toward greater appreciation for life's gifts and deeper commitment to serving others. The Christmas broadcast had achieved exactly what King Charles had intended. It honored Catherine's remarkable resilience while inspiring others to find their own strength in facing life's challenges. The gentle tribute had touched hearts across the Commonwealth while maintaining the dignity and respect that characterized the best royal communications. That night, as families across Britain discussed the King's words over Christmas dinner, many conversations turned to the importance of supporting one another during difficult times. Catherine's example, acknowledged so thoughtfully by the King, had become part of a larger story about courage, community, and hope that would continue to inspire long after the Christmas decorations were packed away. The weeks following the Christmas broadcast brought an unexpected surge of letters, emails, and messages to the royal household. Thousands of people from across the Commonwealth had written to express their gratitude for King Charles's thoughtful words and to share their own stories of resilience and recovery. The response revealed how deeply Catherine's journey had touched ordinary people facing extraordinary challenges. Catherine herself was overwhelmed by the personal nature of many messages. Parents of children with cancer wrote about how her example had helped them explain illness to their families. Breast cancer survivors shared how her grace during treatment had given them courage during their own difficult days. Healthcare workers described using her story to inspire hope in newly diagnosed patients who felt scared and uncertain about their futures. One letter particularly moved the princess. A 10-year-old girl named Emma from Wales had drawn a picture of Catherine as a superhero, complete with a cape decorated with medical symbols. The accompanying note, written in careful cursive, explained that Emma's mother was undergoing cancer treatment and that knowing Princess Catherine got better helped Emma feel less scared about her mother's illness. Catherine decided to respond personally to Emma's letter, arranging for a phone call that would remain private but would give the young girl a chance to speak directly with someone who understood her family's experience. During their conversation, Catherine shared some of the strategies she had used to stay positive during treatment and encouraged Emma to continue being a source of strength for her mother. The ripple effects of the King's Christmas tribute extended far beyond individual letters. Cancer research organizations reported significant increases in funding applications and volunteer registrations. The Royal Marsden Hospital, where Catherine had received some of her treatment, announced a new early detection program specifically designed to reach underserved communities. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, Catherine's oncologist, noticed changes in her practice following the broadcast. Patients arrived for consultations better informed about treatment options and more optimistic about their prognosis. Many specifically mentioned Catherine's example as a source of hope and practical guidance for managing the challenges of cancer treatment. The princess has helped normalize the conversation about cancer in ways that medical professionals alone could never achieve, Dr. Mitchell observed during a staff meeting. Her openness about the realities of treatment while maintaining hope has given patients a roadmap for navigating their own journeys. The King felt deeply satisfied by the response to his speech. He had achieved his goal of honoring Catherine's courage while inspiring others to find strength in their own difficulties. More importantly, the tribute had opened doors for expanded conversations about health, resilience, and the importance of community support during challenging times. William watched with pride as Catherine channeled the energy from the positive response into new initiatives. She began developing a comprehensive support program for families dealing with serious illness, combining practical resources with emotional guidance based on her personal experience. The project would launch quietly the following year, allowing families to access support without the pressure of public attention. The children had their own reactions to their grandfather's speech and its aftermath. George, now more aware of his mother's public role, asked thoughtful questions about how royal families could help people facing problems. Charlotte decided she wanted to visit hospitals to meet children who were sick, though her parents explained she would need to wait until she was older for such visits. Louis, the youngest at 6 years old, seemed most affected by the realization that his mother's experience had helped other families. He began asking if they could send cards to sick children, leading to a family project of creating handmade encouraging messages for young patients at local hospitals. Catherine's approach to her expanded role remained characteristically thoughtful and measured. She understood that her experience with cancer had given her a unique platform for advocacy, but she was determined to use that platform responsibly. Rather than seeking attention for herself, she focused on amplifying the voices of medical professionals, researchers, and other patients who were working to improve outcomes for future cancer patients. The princess's first major public engagement of the new year was a visit to a research facility developing new treatments for pediatric cancers. Her questions during the visit revealed extensive preparation and genuine understanding of the complex challenges facing young patients and their families. Researchers were impressed by her ability to grasp technical concepts and her insightful suggestions for improving patient support services. During the visit, Catherine met with families currently navigating childhood cancer diagnoses. These conversations, conducted away from media attention, gave her deeper insights into the specific needs of parents and siblings dealing with pediatric illness. She listened carefully to their concerns about everything from managing household logistics during treatment to helping healthy siblings cope with disrupted family routines. The knowledge gained from these interactions informed Catherine's developing advocacy work. She began collaborating with existing organizations rather than creating new initiatives, recognizing that her role was to support and amplify effective programs rather than compete with established efforts. This approach reflected the wisdom she had gained about using royal influence effectively and sustainably. King Charles observed his daughter-in-law's evolving approach to her public role with admiration. Catherine had emerged from her cancer experience with greater clarity about her priorities and more confidence in her ability to make meaningful contributions to causes she cared about. The King's Christmas tribute had validated her journey while giving her additional platform to pursue important work. The international response to the Christmas broadcast had been particularly gratifying. Commonwealth nations had embraced the King's message about resilience and community support, with several countries launching their own initiatives to support families dealing with serious illness. Catherine's example had crossed cultural boundaries to inspire action across different societies and healthcare systems. In Canada, the princess's story had motivated a group of cancer survivors to establish a peer support network that connected newly diagnosed patients with others who had completed treatment successfully. The program included practical guidance about managing treatment side effects alongside emotional support from people who truly understood the journey. Australian healthcare organisations reported increased participation in early detection programs following the Christmas broadcast. Medical professionals credited Catherine's openness about her experience with encouraging people to seek medical attention for concerning symptoms rather than delaying care due to fear or embarrassment. The King's tribute had also sparked academic interest in the role of public figures in health communication. Medical schools began incorporating case studies of Catherine's approach to public disclosure about illness, examining how her messaging had influenced public attitudes toward cancer diagnosis and treatment. Catherine herself remained focused on practical outcomes rather than academic analysis of her impact. She continued meeting privately with patients and families, learning from their experiences and identifying gaps in support services that might be addressed through royal patronage or advocacy work. The princess's collaboration with existing cancer organizations proved particularly effective. Rather than creating competing programs, she used her platform to raise awareness of established initiatives and to connect resources with needs. This approach maximized impact while avoiding the inefficiencies that could result from duplicating existing services. 1 year after the Christmas broadcast, Catherine reflected on how profoundly her life had changed. The cancer diagnosis had initially felt like a devastating interruption to her royal duties and family life. Instead, it had become the foundation for deeper, more meaningful engagement with issues that mattered to millions of people. The King's thoughtful tribute had marked a turning point in how Catherine understood her public role. His recognition of her courage had given her confidence to speak more openly about difficult topics and to use her experience as a bridge for connecting with others facing similar challenges. Catherine's children had also grown from witnessing their mother's journey and their grandfather's acknowledgement of her strength. They had learned about resilience, compassion, and the importance of supporting others during difficult times. These lessons would serve them well as they grew into their own roles within the royal family. The letters and messages continued to arrive at the royal household, creating ongoing opportunities for connection and support. Catherine made time to read many of these communications personally, finding in them both inspiration for her continued work and reminders of the real impact that public figures could have on individual lives. King Charles's fourth Christmas address had achieved something remarkable. It had honored a family member's personal journey while inspiring national conversation about resilience, community support, and hope in the face of adversity. The gentle tribute had demonstrated how royal communication could address deeply personal topics with dignity and respect while creating positive change. The success of the Christmas broadcast lay not in its grand pronouncements but in its subtle acknowledgement of ordinary courage. By recognizing Catherine's strength without overwhelming her with attention, the king had created space for others to see their own struggles reflected in royal experience. This connection had motivated action, inspired hope, and strengthened communities across the Commonwealth. As Catherine looked toward the future, she felt grateful for the king's wisdom in crafting such a thoughtful tribute. His words had marked not an ending but a beginning, the start of a new chapter in her royal service informed by personal experience and dedicated to supporting others facing life's inevitable challenges. The gentle homage had become a foundation for years of meaningful work that would extend far beyond any single Christmas broadcast. The legacy of that Christmas morning would continue to unfold through the lives touched by Catherine's example and the king's thoughtful recognition of her journey. In hospital rooms and family homes, research laboratories and support groups, the ripple effects of their story would continue to inspire courage, foster hope, and strengthen the bonds that connect communities during times of trial and triumph.